genre.
Welcome to Beyond Geek By Night, where we go behind the scenes of the Geek By Night podcast. On today's show, we will be continuing our discussion on Heroes by Day. This is the second of multiple Beyond episodes we will have to discuss the series finale and the series as a whole. And today will be part one of our discussion with the cast of Geek By Night. I am your host, Matt Bennett. Joining me today is the voice of Elliot Markowitz, Matt Maassel.
Hey, what's up?
Voice of William Billy Medina, Nick Jimenez.
Hello.
Voice of Cosmo Peters, Paul Maki.
Hi there.
Voice of Joel Vickers, Zach Luna.
What's up?
And voice of Gwen Allen, Ray Ruzzo.
Hello.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
It's exciting to be
So,
here.
I want to start by talking about the finale itself. I want to hear from everyone in the room about how they feel about where their characters ended up at the end of this series. I think that we got a very nice wrapped up little present with a bow on everybody's characters, and kind of wanted to deep dive into those. So, Nick, I'm going to start with you. You and I have already talked quite a bit about the writing and production of the show and about the finale itself, but let's talk about Billy specifically. Obviously, we learn a lot about Billy throughout the series, and he's a major part of everything. So how do you feel about, from an actor's perspective, where his character ended up?
Yeah, we talked about it in our Riders episode a little bit with Cass and Scott. Billy as a villain, we always wanted him to, his purpose was to enhance and spice up the underdog story. So his fate was always nebulous. We wanted him to get his comeuppance. We wanted the audience to get that catharsis of him being toppled and stopped. But how that happened was always just like what would best serve the story. I always said in particular, selfishly, that I wanted to avoid what I called the 90s Disney villain death, where it's like, Billy, behind you, you're too close to the edge, whoa, oh, none of us did it directly, he kind of did it himself, huh? We were like, that's just not the show, that's just not the vibe of the show. So I love the kind of Walton Goggins cable TV ending we give him, where it's kind of this bleak, he has nothing left, he survived, but at what cost? It's very, I love the drama of it, and I like that it's a little open-ended but still bleak enough that you feel like he's suffering, which is satisfying for the listeners.
Sure.
I love that he's got that full circle, that he started out as an assistant to somebody and he ends up forced to be saying yes sir again at the end.
Yes,
Absolutely.
In my notes, for preparing for the discussion, I kind of listed out where each of the characters ended up, and this is not a referendum on you at all, Nick, playing Billy. I just hate Billy, and my the line out of my head was Billy ended up being someone else's lackey, like the bitch that he deserves to
be. Brutal.
Classic.
Just wanted to take everything over and ended up right there again.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about whether that's subconsciously what he wants, or maybe where he's best at, I think his arc in the series was him trying to be Dr. Doom, J. Edgar Hoover, the man in the
two
spotlight.
Good examples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he kind of flew too close to the sun, so it'll be interesting where he tries to go from here.
Yeah.
You're in a very unique position among the cast to be somebody who not just plays a character, but is heavily influencing that character's story and arc. Throughout the series, do you feel like you would add or remove or inject things into Billy as a character because you're a writer and because you have, a higher view of the story as a whole? Or I don't know. It's very, very unique among our cast.
Yeah, it's almost a little, I switch prisms. I do kind of like when I'm in writer mode, I'm sort of living in writer mode, and Billy's just another tool that we have, like another character in our, in our colorful cast of characters. And I'm trying to like put him where he needs to be, the same way I am with Madison and Lorelai. But I'd be lying if I wasn't like, okay, yeah, then I'm gonna have that. Then I'll have that moment. Then I'll say that. And then when actor Nick gets his mail like a few weeks later, and he's like, okay, what did writer Nick do for me? Like, what do I have? And then actor Nick is like, oh no, like, I kind of selfishly did want stuff to happen, but like this is where this is like his best place in the story.
It makes sense. Yes. So Paul, I want to move to you next because Cosmo, I don't want to call Cosmo a villain. I would definitely call Cosmo an antagonist early in the series. But I am curious to get your thoughts on kind of Cosmo's series arc and where he ended up being part of the crew that opens up Conrad Comics and brings a lot of things full circle, both for him and for others.
Yes, I think you just said it, a lot of what I was about to respond with bringing me full circle to the comic book store again. But yeah, I really, sorry, I'm not very good at talking about stuff, I guess.
You're good.
I mean, but I really enjoyed that. Yes.
Zach, we'll move to you. Joel is also part of this crew that opened up the new comic book shop. So can you tell us a little bit about Joel's kind of series arc, how this character evolved, and how you feel about where Joel ended up at the end?
Yeah, I love where Joel ended up at the end because it seemed like I think probably writer Nick and his cohorts had a lot of fun like cutting the legs out from under Joel a lot and seeing what is this guy like when he has even less going on and less going on, and the idea that he had this enthusiastic dog-like ability to just be so thrilled at things that other people hated or that other people were annoyed by, that probably the best he ever felt during the whole course of the show was when he was like homeless and sleeping under the the desks and stuff at the comic book shop and doing retail. And the idea that like that to him was like the goal, that we would have this new version of like, what does it mean to have a happy ending? For some people, for some characters, for sure, it's like growing in different directions and going off and doing solo things. And for Joel to like, he's no longer this like capitalist guy at the top of the heap, but he's like, he has a family around him, which he's never had before. And he has this like thing that brings him joy. And he's got this like lovely lady in his life. Like it's his version of the best possible ending for anything. So much so that they have to like keep him from trying to sleep under the desks again. I just thought that was delightful.
How do you feel about Joel and Charlie ending up together? That was I want to say a surprise, but it was definitely something that appeared in these last few.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, Rachel's great. Obviously we don't like ever interact person to person in this stuff, but I liked that a thing that developed with Joel over the course of the show was this sort of like besties relationship he had with Lorelai, that like, that's my homie, that's my person that I'm ride or die for or whatever. And there's something very charming in the like I don't want to say Harry Potter-ish, but like boarding school-esque like storytelling of like, how do you lock yourself together with your best buddy for life? It's like dating their sibling. It's the Ron and Ginny Weasley of it all. So I really got a kick out of the idea that Joel could be like a part of the family of his bestie in this new way, and that the three of them would have different takes on their relationships with one another based off of this new like mutual like fondness. And it's fun to see Lorelai be like, piss off, yeah, stop being whatever. Like I love the energy there. I thought it was cute. It's nice to have cute stuff. And I know like Scott likes rom-coms and he wants to put in romantic stuff where he can. I thought it was a great place for
Ray, what about you? Let's talk about Gwen. You have been playing Gwen for a very long time.
Like
And
half
now
my
we
life at
finally
this
get to
point.
right, truly. We finally get a real closed out ending for Gwen. How do you feel about where Gwen ended up compared to kind of her arc throughout the series?
Ooh. It was really interesting when I read it for the first time, and I was kind of taken aback. I'm like, I almost rioted a little bit in my head. I'm like, she quits? What? No! And then I sat with it a while, and I have felt very close to Gwen since the beginning. Like the beginning. I've told this story before, but like my audition take of one of the lines was the line he used in the episode because it had come very organically from me. And
Hmm.
after I had submitted it, I played it for my mom. She told me it was too over the top. So whenever I recorded that line again, I had pulled it back quite a bit. And Scott was like, "No, I used the audition take because that's how it would go."
Oh.
So I have felt very, very close to her, especially as like someone with a lot of anxieties and insecurity, a lot of imposter syndrome, but still like trying to be the person who does the right thing. And I kind of realized that in that situation where Gwen no longer has to be the leader. She's no longer like part of this very small group of people, and she doesn't have to take on all of the responsibility. That is growth in and of itself. Being able to let go and like not be, not having to control everything, not having to take on responsibilities that are not yours. Those are huge. And I think that in and of itself is a level of growth. And especially as she came to it from loss. She came to it from losing Victor and seeing him like take, that ultimate sacrifice. And she recognized like that's not who I am as a person. But I think at the same time that's also like she's not fully stepping out of it. Like she's still stepping up and running the comic book store, which is just as much a part of their lives as being a superhero is. She's kind of like she's found her lane. She's found where she thrives, and she's just like, I'm gonna go full steam on that part of who I am and let this other part of my life, like, I loved it, but that's not my future right now. That's who I was for that time. And moving on from that. And yeah, that's just huge, especially when you think about big issues like, oh, superheroes tackling, super villainy. There's a lot of ways to support a big issue. And you don't always have to be a fighter, you don't always have to be on the front lines. You can be the support team. And I think, just running the comic book store is like this safe place to be for people. Like that's her place. And I think she's really happy there.
Matt, what about you? Let's talk about Elliot. Yeah, I'll just open the floor. How do you feel about where Elliot ended up, and especially compared to Elliot at the very beginning of the series?
Yeah, it reminds me of when I took movement for the actor a while ago. The professor we're doing like these different stances, whatever. It is basically like, think of it like a horse stance, and he stood what looked like the horse stance. He's like, okay, now try to push me over. So we'd push him, and he like kind of got off balance, and he's like, all right, now do it again. And it like visually kind of looked the same, but you pushed him, and like he didn't move at all. And I think like when you have these characters that have sort of a full circle thing where it's like, oh, it's like they're repeating the same thing they're doing, but it's like they had to, like with Elliot, had to go through all this stuff to where it's like, yeah, it looks, oh, they're back at, talking about at this publisher trying to sell this idea of this thing, and it's but he has the horse stance. He's like, it's just there's been growth there where there's just like more confidence and so that's just one element where there's a lot of these like subtle things, and the other element too is just interesting how like as characters grow or change, or like I guess as people grow and change too, it's not always this clean like glowing yellow light animation of like I've reached the next level. A lot of times like through this like adversity or during the time that you are growing, you're maybe not in some ways like a good person or great to be around or whatever. So there can be, and I feel like with especially like with Elliot and Gibson, it feels like they grew. So like they were we meet them when they're like weaker versions of themselves. Then they both grow, but that like kind of has this wedge as they but then they grow back into each other towards the end, which is cool to see.
What were your thoughts when you originally read the script and realized that Elliot and Gretchen were not going to end up together?
I think it's a fair choice.
Did it shock you, or does it make sense to you?
I think it makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, because there are those things where there's people that are trauma bonded, and I guess we can probably consider a lot of what happens in this series is like
it's fair
trauma,
capital T.
But I think, yeah, but obviously, like I think if you're already in a relationship, it would make sense that going through a lot of trauma would, because how it affects you, if you're already together with someone, it could just change you in ways where it's like you just can't really reconcile that, or it's not healthy to try to do that, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think a theme that the whole series really explored, but it feels like is kind of being touched on by a lot of these characters, like how messy it is to figure your shit out. And I feel like that gets people to a better place of like further understanding and stuff, but it is not the cleanest, happiest path to get there. So something exciting I want to, I guess, semi-announce is that we are going to be uploading the video recordings of the table reads for the last 3 scripts onto Patreon this week. They'll be Patreon exclusive.
Okay.
But we did a recordings of those that we usually don't. And these are recordings that I have not seen and I did not attend. I was not a part of. So I wanted to ask the room, anybody in the room, kind of like what was the energy in the room when you guys did the series finale table read? I imagine that was a big moment for everybody.
There's this moment I remember very clearly when we did the reading, because I had been pretty I as I said in our writing episode, Benny, I was like more excited and pumped about closing the door and finishing the project than like last day of school emotional about it. But there's this moment early on in the reading during the big old scene 3 where Billy is trying to convince Max to turn to his side, to turn finally. And he's like, isn't this why we've been doing this all these years? Like you and me, what if it's all been leading to this moment? And I had, the script on my phone in my hand, but I lock eyes with Tofty as I'm reading. Like I'm locking eyes with him through his little window on the call. And this voice in my head was like, you have been acting with this guy since you were a teenager. Like Max and Billy is this like 15-year-old kind of, you have this like working relationship with this guy that you really haven't talked to ever outside of this, but time is time. And yeah, I guess like and when you're watching the reading, maybe look for this moment, but you can kind of hear me start to choke up a little bit because like the time just hit me in the gut as I was saying those lines to Scott. So that was a really cool moment.
It was cool. I mean, Joel's always been an interesting character in the scope of this thing because like he's in the very first scene of the reboot new version of this stuff, and then he's there the whole way along, but he wasn't like a member of the crew for like a while. Like it took a while for him to like come back into the fold. And table reads are interesting to me because for a lot of them it was just kind of like the key underdogs or the main people for a lot of the table reads, and then more and more frequently be like, well, it would be nice for you to be in this one because there's a little bit more Joel in this one, or there's a lot more Joel in this one. And by the end of it, to like go from feeling like a fly on the wall to feeling like part of the team was a fun emotion. And the table reads are kind of the only time I get to see these people act, because we record all the lines alone and we're hundreds of miles away and stuff like that. So it was really fun to see everybody come together. I don't have like specific memories of like, oh, you got to watch out for this moment. It was just fun to watch the theater troupe do their thing and feel like we were a big family. That was cool.
Yeah, for me, like with every read through we do, I'm always I guess extra anxious about if any lines I have that are like, here's an emotionally anchoring monologue you had to do. I'm like, oh god, okay, I gotta nail that. Okay, all right, here we go. So that's just a persistent thing throughout. But I don't know, with this whole experience, it's like there's so many people I haven't met in person, which is weird for me for as long as I've been a part of something like this, to just be like, yeah, I haven't even like, I don't know, like, I don't know what they feel like, Yes, just to put it like that. The whole experience of the person. So with that, it's like when things, at the end of things, it's just like I just have these digital memories of these people. But I don't know, should we do like a meetup or something? We're all over the place, aren't we? How do we
the
do
dueling
that?
Conra, the like a convention for.
Yeah. Maybe
Just all
meet
meet
at
in
an airport.
Kansas. It's kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Truly
We have
the
a lot of
middle.
people on the sides. So
Yeah.
as you mentioned, Matt, table reads were kind of the only time that everybody would be in the room together, just due to the nature of VO and everybody in the cast and crew being so geographically spread apart. Does anybody have any other memories of specific table reads, anything that happened? Because over the years, those have been sort of like the punctuations of new Geek by Night coming out and gearing up. So does anybody remember anything from any past readings that they look back on?
Well, I remember like just hearing Zach go into Joel early on and just being like, I know it's the character, but I'm just like, man, this guy's like really, yeah. He's just
Thanks,
right off the bat. But yeah, I mean, you have like a really like that character and your voice with it was just like, peanut butter and jelly. I'm like, geez, it's really nice. So
that's very sweet.
Yeah,
Thanks. No, I've always loved your take on this character, because you had to do the second version of Elliot, right? Like there was a previous version of Geek By Night, and so you just kind of came in and like grabbed this out of the bat. One memory I have from a table read that was thrilling. It's just when we heard the musical bit, when they did the recording with Mindy that Scott Tofty had written all the music for. When we got to hear that together for the first time, that was a really cool moment.
Making it weird, yeah.
To echo what Zach said, I think my favorite moments that when I think about table reads, I can't really think of specific moments. It's more like I love when I know Billy's not going to have another line for a while, and I can just like sit back and like watch Naomi
Mhm.
act, or like get to see Morgan, because you hear it, but to see what they're doing and to see their faces and all that, it's always such a treat.
Yeah.
I like when Cosmo got the like lightning powers. That was fun. I like seeing Cosmo get. I don't know. It's just cool to see the different versions of the characters and then see them come back and do stuff. What did you think about that, Paul? Like when you got to do more like superhero-y villainy stuff.
Yeah, well, it was a lot better than just being a crazed baker with a gun or whatever from the first time around. Yeah, it was really fun to do. Definitely better than. And then also I didn't have to strain my voice nearly as much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember the Muffin Man.
He had a raspy voice.
Yeah,
raspier voice of the Muffin Man.
I think it was yeast damage.
So what year was it that you were playing the Muffin Man, Paul? Because
I don't even know.
I like hearing how long people have been involved.
I mean, I came over
project.
from like he recruited a bunch of people away from Buffy Between the Lines, and that had to have been what, like 08, 09? Is that possible?
Yeah, it was. I remember
think
it
it's like
because it
07,
was like
08.
my sophomore year of college.
Crazy.
So looking back on the series as a whole, are there any moments or episodes or scenes that any of you are particularly proud of? Maybe it's a scene that or a moment that you were involved with, or maybe it was just something that is in this show that makes you feel proud to be part of the show.
I have two. One where it's me, taking a moment and kind of being proud of myself for recognizing, like, oh crap. And then also I have a moment where I'm really proud of like everyone else in the show that Billy has nothing to do with. But so I had to record some pickup lines for the finale. It's everything after I like wake up and I'm like, am I crazy or is there one more of you guys? And like getting arrested, like that whole chunk.
Yeah.
Scott was like, hey man, like there's a part where a helicopter, you have to like be loud and pretend like you're talking over a helicopter. And like, you didn't really do that. So, and I was just happening to be going in the next day to record some auditions with Scott over at his work. And so I was like, oh, well, I'll do the auditions and then we'll knock out those Billy pickup lines. And I do it. And I realize after the fact that was my first time recording Billy in like a professional like recording booth. And I had like, I was standing and I was moving my arms and I could stand away from the microphone and yell the way that I've kind of learned how to do.
Yeah.
And I just thought back to 16-year-old Nick recording Billy lines like on his bed with his blanket over his head on his little like Nessie. And it was this like, wow, like a marker of like time and like how big the adventure's gotten. But a really cool moment where I was just so proud of the show is the scene in The Blind Spot where it's Lorelai and Charlie doing the dishes and it's really tense. And that's when all of it kind of spills over. And Lorelai's like, I do listen to you. And I was just so proud of like Cass and Rachel and Naomi and like just how the show really shifted into a new gear in that moment, in that scene.
I really liked. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I don't know any episode names or
that's fine.
Like even numbers at this point. It's all like a big blur of like, and it's helpful for Joel because he often doesn't know what's going on. So I'm like, I'll just stay in ignorance. It's fine. But there's an episode where Joel goes down into like the Godzilla throat, and then there's like a weird dreamscape shenanigans with Nathan. I think Nathan, right? The one that makes stories real. Brian.
Yeah.
There's the podcast shenanigans where Joel has to kind of have his yellow crayon moment and help save the whole scenario without having any superpowers. That was obviously like the biggest like cool emotional moment for me as like, oh, I'm contributing. Like that Joel wasn't just like the guy making jokes about doing push-ups and stuff. It was like we had to do all this emotional stuff, and it's so crazy to hear it all cut together because I was never in the same room with Brian. I don't know what his take sounded like, but the emotions of the scene all flow great. I was like, this is so cool. What a weird, cool medium we're doing this story in. So that was great. But just hearing people say their stuff is great. Whenever I get to the final episode, I'm just delighted by hearing people's individual takes on things. Like Chris, I'm always shouting out Chris because I think he has this magical ability to take a little throwaway line on the page and just elevate it a little bit. I don't know how he does it, and it just leaves me in awe sometimes, where he'll just have like a little disappointed, like, geez, shucks thing that like I would never have been able to make it funny, and he makes it funny always, but he's never not earnest. I don't know. Chris is great.
I don't know. It's so hard because I truly
Anybody
am
else?
proud of
Go.
everybody. Like, I get seriously fanish about this show, and I spent one day with a friend of mine in we were just like hanging out in Universal Studios, and we were waiting in lines, and I was just like trying to like tell her about this show and like trying to like hype her up so that she would go and listen to it. And I'm like, no, it's not even about the fact that I'm in it, like, because that's like so like such a like I would hype it up anyways. And I just shout out to Morgan and Andrew, because I have shipped Simon and Mindy so hard since the OG show, and just like they're just so good. They're just so good, and they sold that relationship so well. It is like such a beautiful opposites attract, and I love every bit of it.
If you had to pick a scene or an episode to give to somebody who had never even heard of this show and try to convince them to listen to it, what would you pick out?
I want to say the dragon scene from playing the game, just out of context. Like this is where we end up. This is kind of how crazy it gets towards the end. And now go back to the beginning and enjoy just kind of being like, what was that dragon stuff? Like, when's that gonna kick in?
They're just playing a role-playing game at a bar. Like,
I feel like this, for the like, if I was just gonna give someone an episode to listen to that really, and like an early on one, I am forgetting the name of the episode because it's been so long right now. But Nathan's first episode, because it's just so cool with the ghosts and
the
ghost story. That's what
it
was, and you get that real like kind of first look under the hood of what's motivating Lorelai and her loss and her past, and like I don't know, there's just something that is so cool about that episode that I'm like, look, if you aren't vibing on this, like I don't know what to tell you.
Plus, like on a technical level, like the amount of like cool audio VFX and editing and stuff, like that's always shocking to me, because you read the script and you're like, oh, I know what this would be like, and then you're like, wait, but then like Corelli has to sit in a corner somewhere and find all these tiny little audio things and layer them together in a way that like you believe there's hundreds of ghosts flying around the city or people transforming into things. Like that's magic to me. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, and he got it's wizardry, you know. I don't know if he'll ever really internalize what he accomplished with making, especially the whole show and the ghost story. That was kind of when I bet something in him kind of unlocked, and he was like, oh, I can do stuff in this medium that's really cool. And then we get to like Heroes by Day with like all the powers and the craziness and all that.
Yeah.
Is there something about the voiceover, the audio drama medium that you all think really helped elevate Geek by Night? Like, to me, I can't really envision it being anything else, I guess. Just because of the nature of like where I was in my life when I was listening to these episodes, and a lot of it was like, while I was driving or while I was on the train, and like these moments of being able to escape and do the story.
I think it would be really hard to like write a novel of all of the moving parts that you guys got going on in there. I mean, I know that you made a lot of jokes about it near the end about how, the secondary characters are going to go off there now.
Yeah. In my brain, I could envision like a really slick animated version of Geek by Night, maybe like the type of people that make the Invincible show or whatever. Like,
Sure.
I don't love that show, but that like technical acumen on display where that you can visualize some of the crazy stuff in a really dynamic way. I can kind of see that, but I like what you said, Bennett. That like there's an intimacy with. I put this in on my headphones and I'm doing my other thing while I'm like washing my dishes or walking my dog or taking the train or whatever. That like all podcasts in general, I guess, that weird parasocial thing that happens where like I feel intimately connected with these characters in a way that I might not if I had to like sit down in front of my TV or go to a theater or something. Like these have been my guys on my commute for a decade. Like that that means something extra, maybe.
You'll never get a look quite like the one you will get when you're in the middle of a set at the gym, listening to something no one else around you can hear, and you bust out laughing, and and then you just finish your set and you move on because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anyone else is thinking when you're in that little world.
Yeah.
It's something I'm very excited about. The idea of like in the next 5 years, how many people are going to now, because now they can binge the show. They can listen to it
The
all
whole
like
thing.
2 months or 3 months or whatever. Or and how will
Oh,
that
I'm planning on a
change, and
binge
how will that
listen. I've
hit
been kind of
different?
like
So-
waiting for that moment when I can just sit down and listen to it all at once, because it's gonna feel different, like in a binge listen. Some things, and I'm just curious to know how it sounds like that, because there are certain things that function better as a binge. Like my wholehearted opinion, Buffy season 7 can only be watched as a binge watch. Like if you spaced it out, that I think that's why people didn't like it as much.
Yeah. It's so fun as a binge, though.
What's interesting about it being a podcast, and I've been thinking about this a lot now that it is over, about, you know, what if this had been sponsored by Wondery or like a YouTube series or a machinima or something. And like, I think about how many more things we would have had to fight for or justify, like just how so many of our characters kind of came out in these final episodes.
Yeah.
And we could just do that. And there was never a guy in a tie being like, oh, but like we just had Janet. So like, do we need to have Joel? Is that too much? We haven't been setting it up. And like, we never had to make compromises like that. And as difficult as it was to like stay indie, maybe in 2016, we were kind of hoping for something to happen, some sort of pop. But the other side of that is we got to just be in our little corner of the internet and never really get bothered by the outside world, which is really precious.
Those studio notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something like you know, you don't want to over glorify struggling and not making a lot of money on the stuff that you do, but there is something really like kind of noble and pure about getting this little window into, you know, these like 3 main writers and then other writers here and there that they brought on, but that you guys just had this space that was just your own sandbox that you could put pure creative instinct into without compromise. I mean, obviously you'd have to work with each other and not do things that didn't connect or whatever, but that there was something so fun about being able to click back into just like, well, what are Cass and Scott and Nick thinking about this month? Like, I get to just see what you guys are playing with over there, and there was nothing else you're beholden to but your own instincts and your own interests and your love of these characters and the relationships you could create with them. Like, that was, noble in a way. That, you know, I just say what you said, but worse.
One
basically.
might say, staying indie all this time, we were the underdogs of the podcasting world.
Haven't you heard, buddy? We're not underdogs anymore.
And I think all of this, you know, it's a testament to the show that there are so many people who have been involved with this show for 8+, 10+ years and have donated their enormous talent and time to the show, because it's not content. It is,
Hmm.
it's a real story. And like that's what I was thinking about when we were talking about the binge, is like I'm so excited to go through and binge the series because the ending feels so connected to the beginning
Yeah.
that I feel like I'm getting this full, rich beginning, middle, and end. And in the age of streaming, where like if one show gets 7 too few viewers, they cancel it and it's off and it's erased from the platform and no one's ever going to watch it again. It's so nice to have and be tangentially a part of this story that truly was completed
Hmm.
and rounded out at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Nobody canceled us. Like,
Right?
Mhm. Yeah. We just had to keep choosing to do it, and everyone else had to keep agreeing. And some people bailed, and we can never really hold it against them because it was the natural just way of like the way we did it. And it feels really good that we were able to keep so many people and keep those relationships relatively, healthy and respectful.
Yeah. There's a reason there are so many people here at the finish line.
Oh,
yeah.
thank you, Maddie.
Yeah. So a fun one before we kind of wrap up and look back. We've gotten confirmation that as of right now, there are no spin-off sequels, reboots, anything like that planned for Geek by Night, which is great because it has a fantastic ending. But I am curious from anybody in the room. Let's say we picked up on our characters 10 years after the events of the finale. What do you think your character might be doing at the time? Or maybe there's another character that you have a strong idea of what they may be doing in the future.
Gwen and Janet better get married. I'm just saying.
New ship acquired.
Because
Hell yeah.
I know that I was playing
Locked
it
in.
a little flirty towards the end. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I can confirm that is sort of a thing we would have liked to have kept going with in a world where we were able to pay everyone and do the show regularly and do it for 6 seasons in a movie and all that. Like we were really we emptied all of our rounds, but like that was kind of something cute we thought would have been fun.
That's fun.
I don't know. I see Cosmo probably. I mean, continuing to operate a comic book shop. Obviously, the comic book shop, Conrad Comics, and then I think he could probably occasionally pop up to the school and help out with the people with electric powers.
Hell yeah, visiting
love that
adjunct
idea.
professor.
Ooh, yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, kind of like Wolverine teaching history type of thing at
Hell yeah.
Xavier's mansion. Yeah, I mean, Joel, we lucked out. We kind of have the comic book shop crew on this one. On this
Yeah, we
Right.
really do.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Joel just seems so thrilled with the setup with the comic book shop that whatever version of that exists in 10 years with the team all working together. I don't know. We probably have like side projects going on. He really liked developing IP. So I don't know. Maybe he's helping with a movie adaptation of somebody's book deal or something. But I really like the idea of him just chilling with Cosmo at the at the comic book shop. I love that.
What about you, Matt? Where do you see Elliot in
Yeah.
10-ish years?
Well, I think it'd be really cool to see him like step back into, and not necessarily for like more growth, but just he'll feel strongly about something, and I'm keeping kind of vague, but he'll like enter into like a situation or a conflict that really has to like trudge through some deep dark shit basically. And but he's more resilient, and but it still takes its toll, they're still like realistic enough where it's like it wasn't just like, oh, I'm just so much more sure of myself, this is fine. But he's able to like get back into it. So I guess not like a continuation of things are just great and I'm just happy doing that. I mean, you can still be happy or whatever, but it's like there's maybe deeper convictions, and just being okay with sort of making a stronger choice, and with understanding like the consequences. Like, well, yeah, gotta step into this. So that would be fun to see. Just sort of in a way where maybe from the outside it's like, oh, things don't look great for him, but it was a choice. It was less like just reacting to like, oh, I'm in this. It's more like he's deliberately stepped into
like
that.
the hardships that come from making bold choices and not just like the hardships of life sucks. Like this is tough, but this is growth. This is good. Like
he did something.
Yeah,
I don't know. I could
Well,
probably
Maybe
see,
those
like,
hardships are happening.
I don't know. Well, Gwen very much did take the "I'm not going to be doing the superheroing thing anymore" line. I think that given a sufficiently disastrous situation where it is not just like the city at stake, but perhaps the planet or something like that, there could be persuasion. There could be persuasion to like get all the OGs, back into it, because there's a good fight to be had.
Yeah. Paul, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say that maybe Elliot's having all of those dark times in L.A. with the adaptation of his comic book.
Yeah,
right. Getting studio notes from Joel.
No, just like on the phone advice. Like I don't actually go back into it. Yeah, no, that would be an interesting thing. Like the characters that like leave McKinney City and develop their own home bases elsewhere, like what that would be like. How do they interact with because I think that is the thing that happens where even people that mean so much to you at a certain point of your life, when there's enough physical separation, you grow your own like local hub in a different way. And I don't know, maybe that's a superhero type thing or like just the professional development type thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Elliot's kind of a fun question mark because like he and Gibson are going off on their side thing. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not tied to a place; they're tied to each other.
Exactly.
Like, where could that go?
That's why he's the writer. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever gotten to verbalize this, so I guess this is like as good a time as any for Billy. And this is perhaps more of the actor side of me of like just thinking so long about this guy. The question that I've always like had, especially lately, is like, what would a like soulmate for him look like? Like he's so cold and he's so to the point where like I've thought like, is he asexual? Is he aromantic? Is that even a thing that he sees as like a thing we're thinking about or interested in? And I guess when I think about his relationships with Lorelai and Max, is he kind of like, yeah, he subconsciously wants a master worth serving, a dom worthy of subbing for.
Oh my god, my cats just looked up from the cackling. They're like, what the hell?
Oh no. And like, I was watching the trailer for the new Joker movie and I was like, what would that look like for Billy? Like, what would his, like a Macbeth to his Lady Macbeth, like someone that he actually could, because he clearly kind of wants that. And so I think that would have been fun to explore in the beyond Geek by Night, no pun intended.
Nice.
So before my last question, I wanted to kind of open up the floor and see if anybody has any thoughts or memories or anything to do with the series finale or looking back on Geek by Night as a whole.
I mean, shout out to Naomi Wong, shout out to Morgan Spencer, shout out to Kristen Miller, Natalie Van Sistine, just like so dwarfed by the talent we were able to get. It's all a credit to Chelsea.
Yes.
It really does. We put it really well in the last episode. It is as big of a role in like the sound and feel and personality of the show as Tofty's music and like Scott's visual effects.
Yeah, the casting's outrageous.
190 parts were cast by
from tip to tail. Yeah,
wow.
we counted it up.
Wow.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Like I did anything.
I mean, this isn't a particularly innovative thought, or but I love the end of it with the sort of speech to the viewer cut up between the different actors speaking like directly to the audience. It looked really cool on the page, and then to like hear everybody add their chorus into it and the way it fades in and out and all that stuff. I was so stoked. You know, I was like outside walking my dog when I was finally finishing the episode. I mean, it took me like, it released on the Patreon, and then I didn't want to listen to it yet because I felt sad. And then it released on the main feed. I didn't want to listen to it because I felt sad. And then like, it took me at least like 4 days or something to actually get to sitting down and listening to it. And I had to break it up into chunks because it's long. But to have that last moment, you know, walking my dog, hearing these voices speak to the audience we've cultivated, but to us as collaborators and listeners as well. You know, we are in a way the most loyal listeners of the show, or the people who made it. I think that last speech rules and is like a nice mature take on growing up and whatnot. But just, it was really cool to hear people earnestly present these, you know, feel good feelings of like, it's okay, we're still here, you can still love your things. And it closed out with Gibson. I loved it. Like, I really thought everybody nailed that, because that's not an easy thing to do if it's not like a scene, it's just like a speech. Sometimes it's harder than if you're like yelling at somebody or really engaged or whatever, to just like step up forward and present something with full earnestness. And everybody did it. It was really cool.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised that you have anything like this where there's so many people doing it for free, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, it's a lot of effort.
And it's interesting.
Yeah, man.
And
it doesn't really feel like a lot of effort. Like, yes, looking back at the time commitment I put into this, I don't want to tally it up, but I feel like I got so much out of doing this, and I feel so connected to the people that I've met, and like, I have met many people in real life since then. I know that's not the case for a lot of people, but for a long while, Scott Tofty lived like a few blocks over from me. Like, I would walk his dog on a regular basis, and we just ended up in like neighborhoods next to each other, and like, I don't know. Naomi was here in Brooklyn for a while, and like, we took pictures at the Captain America statue in Brooklyn. Like, I don't know. I love everybody so much, and those of you who I haven't seen in person yet, I really hope to. And I just like, I don't want to lose touch with everybody just because the show's over, because you're all just like incredible creative people. And yeah, I'm gonna stop rambling now, but it's the family of it
Thanks,
all
Ryan.
that has made this so special.
Sure.
Hell yeah.
And actually, that's a great transition into my last question, and this is for anybody, and that is, what are you going to miss most about Geek by Night?
well, I'm gonna miss that I finally have a semi-professional recording space, but I only got it set up like the very last few episodes or whatever else. Darn it! I'm like finally prepared, you know, not in a closet in an apartment, and having to time it between the upstairs neighbors, like being amorous or for real. It was like, it was quite like an orchestral percussion.
Thank you for the image.
Event.
Thank you.
Anyways.
Awesome. That's so
Born
cool.
storyteller.
Good for them.
Yeah. I guess so. What was? Oh yeah.
I'll miss that too.
I'll miss that too.
We got a little off topic, but it was always it was kind of fun though, because it was just like I could feel every time we would do like a read through or like recording the lines, it was just sort of a reason to like, you know, I had to like summon myself for it in a way where a lot of I just didn't really have a lot of like performance outlets, I guess,
Mm.
in my life
Mm.
throughout, or like especially after college. So I mean, it was a mix of, there was always the anxiety, but I was just like, okay, and it's just like, gather yourself. You gotta. So
Oh,
I kind of miss that.
yeah.
It's great.
Thank God other people felt like they had to like summon it, because I was always like, I don't know. Joel's such a weirdo, but like I feel I have to find him and locate him, and it could go months in between us, recording
Mhm.
lines for some of these things. I'm like, do I still know how to do this? Do I still like,
Yeah.
do I have access to
Yeah.
that still? Fuck. And so there's like, anytime I had a recording session by myself, like the first 20 minutes or whatever is just garbage. Where I'm like, fuck, I don't know how to do this. God damn it. And then like, oh, okay, yeah. Lock in. Yeah, I'll miss just getting to hear people's voices in these characters. Like, I think I said this already with the comment about the table reads, but the delight or surprise of the show, because like, we're all dorky, nerdy people. We all like this sort of stuff. You read the script and you can envision what it's going to be like. And like, you read one of these scripts and you're like, wow, what a full experience I just had. This is so exciting. Now I got to do work on it, whatever. The delight and surprise was to hear everybody else do their bit, because I could imagine it fine reading it the same way when you like read through a comic book, you're having a full experience of, whatever your version of Captain America is in your head, whatever your line read is for that thing that Wolverine says. But to hear the specific actors specifically elevate the stuff was the surprise that you open at the end. We do all of this work. We have all of this like weird scheduling stuff and dealing with files that got corrupted and useless. And then, back and forth with takes or having to redo takes and redo things. Like at the end of all of that, I've already experienced the story, but the delight was the surprise of hearing everybody do it in their way. And I can always come back and listen to these. I can always come back and even read the old scripts and see what changed, but I won't get that birthday present of like, here's how Mindy sounds when she says this bit. Here's how Simon says this line. Here's, Cosmo getting to be in the comic book shop again. Like, I don't get that gift anymore, so I'll miss that.
I'm gonna miss being a part of something that's just from everybody's love for it. I get a little bit of that working for public television in a small station, but it's not the same. It's just that everybody is just doing it for the love of this project.
That really is the fuel of
Yes,
the show
exactly.
is how much people just care about the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just echoing what Zach said. I was joking with Scott and Cass on our little group chat. Like, after I die, you're gonna find like hundreds of like scripts of the sorority just in my desk that I've never showed anyone. But even then, I won't get to hear like Natalie be Madison or like Naomi be Lorelai, and that is like it's something so human and singular that person brought to that character, and it would surprise you after months and months of writing. They would read it and surprise you and make you laugh.
What about you, Ray?
I guess everyone's kind of said it, like, I don't know, obviously, because I did do some directing for this, and like being able to pick, so like picking the takes that make it all flow together. Like, obviously, I don't know how much this was ever talked about, but we record each of our lines at least 3 different ways so that we can make it all sound like it fits together in a conversation. And just, I would always approach it, I don't know, I guess because I have had such a long history with this, I have an idea going into editing what the cadence of this should sound like. And sometimes, yeah, there's like an amazing surprise in there, but sometimes hearing someone say it just the exact way I thought they were going to say it is like its own kind of magic of just like feeling really keyed in to like, I know these people, I know these characters, and I have an idea already of how they're gonna do this, and then they did it, and I'm like, yes! It feels like being so in sync with other people, even though you're hundreds of miles away. And granted, like, as things kind of got to the end, I didn't get that sort of hands-on experience anymore. But I still remember how magical it felt to just kind of be like, this is how it's going to be, and then there it was.
Oh. Fantastic.
There it was.
There it was. Yep. Well, I want to say thank you to my guests for joining me today. Matt, Nick, Paul, Zach, Ray. And thank you to all of you, the fans, the underdogs, for listening to this today. If you'd like to see the videos of the table reads for the final 3 episodes of the series, they will be posted on Patreon this week, including the original final scene of the finale, which was rewritten and re-recorded, as we discussed in the previous Beyond.
Yeah.
We will see you next time with part 2 of our finale and retrospective discussion with the cast. Have a super day.